Hey y'all, it's Kelt, and let's talk about the Epstein files. Roll clip.
The DOJ may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients. Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we'll check back with you.
If Trump wins, that Epstein client list is going to become public.
Yes.
Epstein's case, it is incredibly disturbing. We have flight logs, we have information, names that will come out.
Is it going to be shocking?
I don't see how it's not shocking that there were so many individuals that were hidden and kept secret and not been held accountable. Let's talk about the reverse. I believe in accountability. So you have to now go through your process. Now, I won't say they're guilty until they go through their time in court. But again, now it's time for accountability. We have seen for so many years, Pierce, in this country, many investigations, subpoenas, testimonies in Congress, et cetera, et cetera. But there's a general frustration with accountability. We take it halfway. We don't take it home. And I really believe that now with Cash and Pam, there will be accountability.
Rhetoric we've heard from the right since Epstein was first arrested and then subsequently got perished. The entire idea of a group of pedophilic elites running the world as a shadow government or cabal was the entire purpose of the QAnon conspiracy theory that supposedly Trump was about to blow open. And while that conspiracy theory was during his initial presidential term, it did roll over into this presidential term when he announced that one of the main things that he was going to do when he was elected was release the JFK, MLK, and Epstein files. And very quickly within his second term as president, there was a release of new JFK files and new MLK files. So you can imagine everyone's shock when this memorandum popped up on the Department of Justice website stating that there was no Epstein files. Now, in interest of full transparency, I've done a lot of videos stating that I do not believe an Epstein master list exists. And I stand by that now, even with the memorandum from the Department of Justice that there's no Epstein files. And in those past videos, I have stated that I did not believe that, as the general public, we would see more Epstein files released than what we already had. We have Epstein's Black Book, we have the flight logs, and we have the public testimonies of some of the victims. But even with me maintaining those beliefs, that there's not a master Epstein list, and I'll explain that in a second, and that we would not see any more Epstein files, this memorandum from the Department of Justice is nothing more than a cover-up. If you're new to my channel, I say that as a person whose background is in human intelligence, meaning I have conducted over 10,000 investigations, interrogations, and interviews over a 20-year career. My background is in investigation, mostly studying counter-extremism and violent extremism, but investigation is pretty much investigation. So, if I have a background in investigation, why would I tell you what seems to be two conflicting statements? That there is no master Epstein list, and that the public more than likely would not see Epstein files released, and that the DOJ is attempting to cover up the Epstein case. Well, it's because both can be true at the same time. The QAnon conspiracy theories, political pundits, and the media have created a distorted view of what actually would be in the Epstein files, and Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice and the Trump administration are using that as part of their cover-up. The Department of Justice has come out stating that there is no Epstein list, and that's actually probably very true, but it doesn't mean that there's not a way of finding out who Epstein's clients were. But that would actually require investigation and actual work. Because the reality is, while they're digging through the Epstein files and the media they recovered from Epstein's island, more than likely they did not discover an Excel spreadsheet that stated Prince Andrew was with this victim on this date at this time, and this is where the videotape is stored on this shelf. Because, as I said previously in different videos, Epstein's money and Epstein's business was not human trafficking. That was a side hustle for someone like him. His money came from his business ventures. He had made his wealth, and that's what enabled him to do the human trafficking, not the other way around. People like Epstein would use their human trafficking and their pedophilic activities and their association with wealthy elite people for potential blackmail, but not in the sense that a lot of people are thinking about. More than likely, Epstein was not using blackmail to get political or business favors. That's what he was doing with the human trafficking and the underage girls, aka the children that he was trafficking to pedophiles. He more than likely used the blackmail as a cover his own butt type situation. Epstein was more than likely using the wine and dine style of bribery, bringing people onto his island, letting them do these illegal activities, and then he is keeping a record of it hidden away as a cover his own butt situation. People coming onto his island to participate in these illegal activities, knowing that if they expose Epstein, they are also at risk of being exposed, of having engaged in it. So no, I don't believe that there's a master list that they can release and be like, here's Epstein's clientele. But, keyword but, they could do investigations and they could actually start bringing prosecutions. The issue is they can't do that in such a way that doesn't expose people that they don't want to expose. Right now, we know that Donald Trump and Epstein were friends. We know that Epstein has multiple listings for the Trump family in his black book, that Trump flew on Epstein's private plane multiple times. That's what we know. We also know that both Bill Clinton and Bill Gates were in that book and on that plane. So a logical person would conclude that more than likely Donald Trump, Bill Gates, and Bill Clinton are involved somehow in Epstein's illicit affairs. The issue comes up as long as it is just listing on flight logs, listing in little black books, and hey, we used to be friends. These people are now able to deny it. They can distance themselves from it. You know, I used to be Epstein's friends, but then I got a sketchy vibe about him and I stopped being his friend. But once they start prosecuting someone, that's when the house of cards starts to fall. That's when one person starts pointing the finger at someone else. How do you point out that somebody was at the island without pointing who else was at the island with them? That's why we get a cover-up. That's why we get going from there's a ton of videos, tens of thousands, to there's no videos at all. There's nothing. There's no evidence whatsoever. Because the only way to protect your friend is also to protect the person on the list you don't like also. That's why Trump didn't release anything during his first administration. That's why Biden didn't release anything during his administration. That's why Trump is now acting like this doesn't exist and wants people to stop talking about it during this administration. We know this is how this is going to play out because we saw the same thing with the Panama Papers. Remember when we found a bunch of these documents that proved that the wealthy elite were hiding money in different countries so they didn't have to pay taxes on it? Guess what happened to that? Nothing. It just disappeared. I shouldn't say nothing came about it because I'm pretty sure the person who broke the Panama Papers story ended up dying somehow. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to look it up again. But as a person with an interviewing background, where my life's work is based on, I am telling you the only reason an administration would not be flaunting the Epstein files as a victory and at least attempting to use it to punish their political opponents, and I'm saying either side would do that, is because they believe that they cannot do it in such a way that does not also expose their friends. The problem for Trump now comes that he literally has to do the playbook out of 1984, the Ministry of Truth. He has built his entire brand around the idea that he is the savior against these pedophilic elites, and now he's telling people not to worry about it. And to do that, he has to recruit the same people that he used to make people think that he wanted to expose them. The only difference between 1984 and reality with this, though, is we are able to see their old posts and see now what they're saying. In fact, there's an entire Twitter account called, I think it was This You, where they post how the only thing they care about is the Epstein release, and now even people like Charlie Kirk are saying it's not a big deal and we should ignore it. The irony being is MAGA was a little bit right in all this. There are a group of pedophilic elites that are trying to protect child molesters by using the United States government to shield them. The part that they got wrong was they thought it was a deep state. In reality, it's actually just MAGA and Donald Trump. Of course, they'll never actually realize that. They'll continue to blame Pam Bondi instead of actually accepting that their Lord and Savior, Donald Trump, is also a pedophile. But this shows a crack in their messaging. This is something that you can use to pull that family member or friend that you've stepped away from because of their Trump derangement and their obsession, to pull them out of the cult. You're not going to save the diehards. You're not going to be able to use this to save them. There's no pulling people like Charlie Kirk and Matt Walsh and all of them out of it, those pundits that are making buku bucks off of this. You can possibly save your Meemaw. The Epstein files and the promise of the Epstein compatriots receiving justice and going to jail and being prosecuted was a big enough push that you could use this and the right techniques and the right talk with your family members that were MAGA to pull them out of the cult. If you were looking for a way to save a person out of the MAGA cult, this is more than likely your best shot. At this point, though, I will say if you use this on a person and you use this as a way to try to pull them out of the cult, and Alligator Alcatraz, the ICE raids, the due process, and then even then when you add in the Epstein files and now becoming the Epstein cover-up by Trump, if that doesn't work, that person's a lost cause. You have no chance. They're going to have to come onto it on their own if they're ever going to leave the cult. But as a whole, you should be side-eyeing every politician, regardless of party, that is not wanting Epstein prosecution. Doesn't matter, Republican, Dem, Independent, does not matter. If they are not pushing for the messaging now that something needs to be done and the Epstein compatriots need to be prosecuted, Maxwell brought before Congress to actively testify about who she trafficked children to, you need to side-eye them. Every politician that's not worried about their name coming up should be demanding an actual investigation and prosecution of the people who victimized children on Epstein Island. If they can't do even that basic messaging, they should be primaried and never given a shot again at office. And to be honest, this is one of the few things that I believe that all sides of the political spectrum should be able to reach across the aisle and agree. Child molesters, pedophiles, and sexual predators have no place in our government. So if you're a pundit, I don't care if you have 1 follower, 100,000 followers, or 1 million or more followers, and you're saying we need to move on from the Epstein files, I'm looking at you a little suspicious. Everyone should be looking at you a little suspicious. But, as always, stay vigilant, stay safe, stay on their necks, and I love y'all.